deals in 90 days?
Because the rest of the world has it so good that they're dragging their heels. But the president will not allow that.
Are we just making things up now? I mean, 90 days and 90 deals in 90 days didn't happen. Now that it's not happened, is it because people are coming to us or because they're not coming to us?
Well, Peter Navarro very much has a perspective. He's not really interested in deals. He would like to have high tariffs. That's his. He is in the minority view in this administration right now, but that is his perspective.
3 weeks later.
Well, let's take you live to Turnberry now, where in the last few minutes President Trump has announced that the US and EU have reached a trade deal. Let's listen to what the president has had to say.
So I just want to congratulate you. I think it's great that we made a deal today instead of playing games and maybe not making a deal at all. I think it's, I'm going to let you say, but I think it's the biggest deal ever made. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is now official. Donald Trump and the United States have just reached and finalized a trade deal with Europe. This comes after extensive negotiations. And as a matter of fact, if you're a regular viewer on this channel, you would have gotten this news early because just a couple days ago, we covered the way in which the EU was basically caving and trying to desperately rush in a trade deal before the August 1st deadline, by which they would have been forced to go back to Liberation Day tariffs. And essentially, as we covered in this story, the issue was not going very far until the Japanese, just a couple days before, announced their 15% reciprocal plan. And essentially Europe, who's trying to get lower than that, basically said, okay, Trump, we'll cave, we'll finally get it done. And I have to say, this is yet another example of the experts, the doubters, the panicans, the so-called media pundits being wrong yet again, because not only has the tariff threat, they said the August 1st deadline was fake, they said Trump was not going to do anything, has that actually resulted in real trade deals, showing that Liberation Day and the ensuing tactics have indeed been effective on one hand. But of course, secondly, many people also told us or assumed that there is absolutely no way you're going to get a trade deal with the EU done before August 1st. After all, there's like 27 different member states. We know the EU is this sprawling, ridiculous bureaucracy. Surely this is going to take years. There's no hope. Well, as it turns out, when you're Trump and his administration, you can just get things done. You can make things, you can do the impossible they thought they'd never be able to see, such as, for example, actually getting the EU to move its feet on anything. So we'll give you the full details of that in today's video, as well as show you some of the ridiculous media seething and panic, because again, they just want to try so desperately hard to be right about this narrative, to essentially sit there and say that, oh, Trump is wrong. Oh, there's no trade deal. Oh, Taco Trump. And as that narrative just comes apart in real time, needless to say, I think these people are struggling a bit. We'll get into it. First though, folks, as usual, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Subscribing here, guys, is not only the best way to support our videos, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And the first thing I want to note about this entire situation, before we'll tell you in a second here the specific details of this trade deal, is the narrative you've heard all weekend about how President Trump is just going to Scotland for absolutely no reason, right? He's just going to play golf. He's leaving the country. What a terrible president. And it's kind of worth noting here, everyone who was saying this was being intentionally disingenuous. No, the reason he was going to Scotland was to finalize the trade agreement with the European Commissioner, who, as you're seeing now on Sunday, in the announcement from Scotland, was indeed successful. But even then, just hours before, here you had CNN absolutely throwing a fit about it, trying to like pin some type of angle for Trump to be wrong, when indeed, no, he was right. All right, check it out.
President Trump is back on the golf course here in Scotland this morning at Turnberry. He'll be playing golf for a couple hours before he is heading into a very important and critical meeting with the chief of the European Commission. Of course, there is a deadline looming on tariffs for next Friday. The president has set a deadline for if there's not a agreement brokered, there could be a 30% across the board sweeping a tariff that would really spark a trade war, a transatlantic trade war. So the president is going to be meeting with Ursula von der Leyen in just a couple hours to try and negotiate some type of an agreement. Now, what officials are telling us is that they believe a leading possibility is cutting that in half, a 15% across the board levy. Certainly that would end some of the uncertainty that really has been going through European businesses. Of course, America is the biggest trading partner of the European Union. The two have had a frosty relationship in the past, but the president, when he arrived here in Scotland, seemed to signal optimism.
Ursula will be here, highly respected woman, so we look forward to that. In terms of a deal, we're meeting with the European Union, and that would be actually the biggest deal of them all if we make it.
But before we continue further with this video, a quick word from today's sponsors. This stock is outperforming Bitcoin, and it has been for years, and it is now trading on the NASDAQ. We have been covering DeFi technologies listed on NASDAQ as DEFT since May of 2024, and the results are staggering. Since then, Bitcoin is up 50%, but DeFi up over 122% in just the past year. You zoom out, it gets even crazier. Over a 2-year span, Bitcoin was up 238%, but DeFi over 3,000%. Over a 5-year span, Bitcoin up 1,000%, DeFi up over 9,000%. So what is driving this insane growth? Well, DeFi Technologies is not a crypto coin, and that is not something I'm trying to sell you. It is a business, a profitable one at that, with a P/E ratio of just 9. Their crown jewel, Valor, a subsidiary that manages over $800 million in assets, issues over 75 crypto exchange traded products, ETPs, and earns about an 8% yield from staking and lending, and they're expanding globally in Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, adding more products and markets every quarter. They're on pace right now to hit 100 ETPs by the end of 2025. And even as Bitcoin trades near all-time highs, DEFT trades at a discount, now down 33% since mid-May, even after posting record revenue and $201 million in 2025 revenue guidance. They've launched now DeFi Alpha, an internal trading desk that pulls in over $100 million in gains in just 1 year, and those profits go right back to the balance sheet, and they're not done. Their acquisition of Stillman Digital gave them now US exposure, and their Solana ETP is now the third largest in Europe, generating an 8.5% yield on staked SOL, unmatched by any other asset manager globally. It's worth noting as well that Trump's administration is pro-crypto, with executive orders supporting digital assets and a crypto czar in place. U.S. crypto adoption is accelerating, and DeFi Technologies, in some humble opinions, seems perfectly positioned to benefit. Even major names like Anthony Pompliano are shareholders, and their founder, Olivier Roussy Newton, owns 17% of the company, and he's not selling. The company is even buying back its own shares. So here's the bottom line. DeFi Technologies has outperformed Bitcoin, is profitable, is expanding globally, and still trades at conservative valuations. That's why I encourage all of you to don't buy anything yet. This is not financial advice, but be sure to go and do your own research on DeFi Technologies, listed again on NASDAQ as DEFT today. More information in the description. So you could hear it in their voice, and by the way, a lot of Democrats online were being significantly worse than this, saying Trump is just going golfing in Scotland, right? I mean, there's skepticism. Who knows what's going to happen? Well, ladies and gentlemen, just hours after Trump was seen golfing, he's not on the job. Oh, well, it turns out he can golf and still negotiate one of the biggest trade deals in history. President Trump has just hit a massive home run in his European trade deal victory while in Scotland. Essentially, you're going to get here a generally zero tariff agreement in many regards. On top of that, on some products, not all, but some, as we'll show you, the EU is going to purchase $750 billion worth of energy. They're agreeing to invest $600 billion in the United States. And importantly, they are agreeing to open up their countries at a 0% tariff. Of course, as we've so often covered, as is the case with many Asian nations, but also the sort of hypocritical Europeans in this regard, that they, of course, these nations, the EU specifically, makes it very difficult historically for American products to be sold at reasonable fair market rates, especially in their markets, right? They practice heavy protectionism. And essentially, if you're going to have the situation where the US obviously purchases so much from Europe in terms of cars, in terms of food products, many other things, why is it not reciprocal? How come Germany, for instance, can get massively rich off the United States, but you never see that in the reverse? Well, here you go. They're also agreeing to purchase a vast amount of military equipment because, after all, Trump has repeatedly said to the NATO nations, what are you doing? Why do you never pull your feet and pull your own weight in this regard? And they're further agreeing for a tariff straight across for automobiles and everything else that will be a straight tariff of 15%. And so I've brought up before the fact that the U.S. tariff on European cars versus the European one on American cars is massively imbalanced. Now they're basically reaching an agreement where it's actually fair market competition because both cars in both markets are competing under the same ground rules. We've been so often told, for instance, that, Europeans will never buy American vehicles. Yet when you go to many parts of the European Union, as I did this summer, you will see plenty of Fords, actually. Not the same kind of Ford, but, the European-style cars, but built by American companies. But as it turns out, right, when you actually make it fair, hey, let's actually see what happens. So there you go. And, whatever it is, money and revenue, obviously, for American companies. We have a tariff of 15%, and we're opening up all of the European nations to trade here. $750 billion of energy, $600 billion of investments. And I once again want to reiterate here to people, guys, this is only made possible because of the fact that, number one, President Trump had the August 1st deadline. Again, the Democrats in the media kept on saying, oh, that's not real. Oh, he's Taco Trump. Why would anyone actually believe that? Well, as it turns out, the European Commission decided, okay, well, we are not in the position to see whether or not Trump is serious about this. We need to make a deal now, because if not, it's going to be a catastrophe. So there you go, right? They said, okay, let's make the deal. Again, rushed a bureaucratic nightmare mess into actually doing something efficiently. But number two, as I also brought up to you, the fact that a very similar trade deal, right, the 15% to 15% was done with Japan. As I said, once the Trump administration basically gets the first few deals done, that makes it a lot easier because there's already a framework to go off of. And many of these nations are kind of scared to be the first, but they all want to be the second. And so that's a trend you've seen across Southeast Asia, where you have the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and almost all those nations now going on the same trade agreement, which is like 20% tariffs paid into the U.S., 0% tariffs for U.S. goods going into those markets. Well, and in terms of Japan and Europe, right, similar, I guess, kind of economic partners of the U.S. in that regard. Here you see the Europeans, after not really knowing what to do, just seeing what the Japanese did and saying, okay, fine, we want that, please give us that. So again, this is just another example of how the Trump administration's negotiating tactics were indeed successful. But with that said, let us sit here and take a listen to the announcement from Trump and the European Commissioner out of Turnberry, Scotland today, so we can once again understand that the media and the Democrat Party and the so-called experts were wrong. All right, here you go.
European Union is going to agree to purchase from the United States $750 billion worth of energy. $750 billion worth of energy. They are going to agree to invest into the United States $600 billion more than they're investing already. So they're investing a large amount of money. You know what that amount of money is. It's very substantial, but they're going to invest an additional $600 billion. They're agreeing to open up their countries to trade at zero tariff. So that's a very big factor. Opening up their countries, all of the countries will be opened up to trade with the United States at zero tariff. And they're agreeing to purchase a vast amount of military equipment. We don't know what that number is, but it's the good news is we make the best military equipment in the world, so sort of you have to do that. I mean, until somebody tops us, which is not going to happen. We're way ahead. And $600 billion worth of investments into the United States over and above what they have. So, and I think that basically concludes the deal. I mean, those are the main factors. I don't think there are too many other factors, other than we're going to get along great. And we have a great relationship now with NATO, which is largely the same. I mean, not exactly, but pretty close, right? Largely. And with NATO, as you know, they're going up to 5% from 2%. And the relationship is very strong with NATO. So I just want to congratulate you. I think it's great that we made a deal today instead of playing games and maybe not making a deal at all. I think it's, I'm going to let you say, but I think it's the biggest deal ever made. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
We have a deal. We have a trade deal between the two largest economies in the world. And it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. It will bring stability. It will bring predictability. That's very important for our businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. It's 15% tariffs across the board, all inclusive. The investments Mr. President just described that are going to go to the United States and the purchases over there. Indeed, basically the European market is open. It's 450 million people. So it's a good deal. It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
It was tough negotiations. I knew it at the beginning, and it was indeed very tough, but we came to good conclusions for both sides. So again, congratulations and many thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So there you have it. Again, a major accomplishment before the August 1st deadline. You are basically now at a position where the majority of America's major trading partners, besides Canada and China, all basically have deals finalized or being put into place here. And I also want to drop another little prediction on this front. I think in a similar way you saw the Japanese trade deal basically influence Europe to move its feet, I think you similarly up in Canada, very likely here, we'll see the EU decision now kind of influence the Canadian decision because, of course, people said about the EU's never going to cave, right? They're liberals. They're not that much different from the Canadians. Okay, but a little bit less political, I guess, in that regard than the situation up there. But now watch, I'm telling you this, as I said a couple days ago, when Japan did the deal, now Europe's going to do the deal. My next prediction is because Europe did the deal, you're now going to see Canada do the deal. And again, just a massive victory all around. So you're getting reciprocal tariffs and zero tariffs reciprocally in some areas. You're getting massive investments in the US in terms of purchasing of military equipment, of resources, of just straight up investment of energy, all these things. And hilariously, you even had the EU commissioner basically admitting that it was a massive win for the Trump administration in the United States, because when asked, hey, what major concessions did the US give up because you guys obviously conceded a lot, her reply here was basically nothing. Donald Trump just massively outsmarted us in every single way imaginable.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for the EU Commissioner President. What are the U.S. concessions? What is the U.S. giving up in the deal, if anything?
So the starting point was an imbalance, a surplus on our side and a deficit on the U.S. side. And we wanted to rebalance the trade relation. And we wanted to do it in a way that trade goes on between the two of us across the Atlantic, because the two biggest economies should have a good trade flow between us. And I think we hit exactly the point we wanted to find. Rebalance, but enable trade on both sides, which means good jobs on both sides of the Atlantic, means prosperity on both sides of the Atlantic, and that was important for us.
So the answer there is basically nothing. Okay, the United States conceded nothing. Basically, they were just threatening Europe, and in response, Europe says, okay, we'll fix the trade imbalance by buying a lot more of your stuff, including energy, including, weapons, including investments, all this different stuff. Here's a bunch of money, US. Please don't impose 30% tariffs on us, right? That is the answer. So again, massive victory. But what you saw even in that question was an attempt by the media to try to figure out why this is a bad thing, right? Because they're, again, absolutely shocked at this. Oh, I thought we wouldn't see this deal. I thought the European Commission wouldn't do it. I thought August 1st is supposed to be the disaster day where all the devastating Liberation Day stuff is going to go back into effect, and yet that defeat for Trump simply doesn't exist. And so take a listen how they're now trying to spin it, because it is truly hysterical. You have, for instance, the headline here from NBC News stating that the US and European Union have reached a deal to impose a 15% tariff on one of the country's biggest trade partners. Which is, of course, written to sound like a bad thing, right? Oh, tariffs, that's it. You know, this is terrible. Country's biggest trade partners, totally ignoring the fact. Notice that in the headline, that Europe has agreed to invest and buy hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods and energy and all this stuff from us for nothing in return, okay? Just totally admit that fact. No, the tariff, guys, read the part about the tariff. Of course, we tune into their counterpart over at MSNBC, and as you can imagine here, the coping, the seething, the excuses, the reasons to find why this is somehow a bad thing are getting even more pathetic. So take a listen here to how, guys, the folks over at MSNBC reacted to this news, where, again, there's not really much negative to say about it because Trump dominated this negotiation. So let's see how they're going to spin this to be a bad thing, and we'll react to it live because I find this to be pretty hysterical. Okay, take a listen.
When it came to the European Union, and that there was a trade deficit when it came to the United States. I think what's also interesting here is that the president at one point was complaining about cars and saying that there weren't enough American cars being sold in the European Union. They're now agreeing, according to what their announcement is, 15% automobile tariff. You already smartly ran through so many of the other things, but it seems like the European Union is going to be making some big investments in the United States. And overall, if we even back up and look at the big picture here, President Trump was under pressure to make trade deals. He said he had already reached something like 100, 200 trade deals, but we only saw about a handful of them. So this at least adds one more trade deal as that August 1st deadline continues to loom, with the president saying that's the deadline to reach trade deals across the board. Alex.
So already there you hear a lot of disingenuous coping, okay? Because she's basically trying to make it sound like because there's only a few major trade deals that have been finalized, Trump's basically done nothing, okay? Taco Trump, they're not real, all this stuff, as if the 100 some odd nations in Africa, for example, make a big difference in this regard. No. As a matter of fact, when you break it down, the U.S. has already reached or come close to reaching trade deals with almost all of its major trading partners, as I said, except for China, which is ongoing. Both sides are saying they're getting closer, but okay. But China and Canada, that's basically it. Because we've had trade deals with Japan, okay? Korea, maybe that one has to come, so maybe I'm missing that one. But they've also agreed to invest. Their companies have already invested hundreds of billions of dollars into the U.S., so it doesn't seem like there's a lot of hostility there. But okay, Japan is done. EU is done. Okay, let's remember, we're not talking about one nation in Europe. We're talking about almost the entire continent, besides a couple minor countries in the UK, who, guess what? We also got a trade deal with the UK. We've done them with our manufacturing partners in Southeast Asia, that being nations like Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, etc. So this is all to say, now that the EU is off the board, most of America's major trading partners, okay, forget about, I don't know, Zimbabwe, okay? No one cares about the trade deal with Zimbabwe, although maybe they did do a trade deal. I don't know. But, okay, when you actually break it down, right? We're almost basically done. It is August 1st now looming. The only nation on the board really still is China. And I guess you could say Canada. That's it. So just for context there, when you say, oh, there's only a few trade deals done, okay, but the trade deals done are with most of America's major trading partners. So in other words, a lot has been done, and this is no small thing. We're talking about 27 nations, okay, in the European Commission. So it's not a little thing, you moron. But again, this is them trying to downplay it. Okay, listen to what the next guy has to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good point there, because August 1st is looming this Friday. In fact, before I get to the details with you, Courtney, I want to ask you, Ned, diplomatically speaking, what was accomplished here?
Well, Alex, I think we got a really good example of President Trump very blatantly and clearly misleading the American people and all viewers in front of our eyes. For the president to say about an hour ago that there was a 50% chance of a deal with the EU and 3 or 4 big issues remain, who knows, could go this way, could go that way. And for an hour later, for the president and his EU Commission counterpart to be sitting there announcing a trade deal, the deal was signed. behind before President Trump went out the first time. This is
Okay, that's how you know that this is a massive victory for Trump, because that's their criticism. Really, that's what you're going to say, right? He misled people because an hour ago, they said there was a 50% chance at a deal. And then an hour later, he said the deal was done. Okay, well, can I maybe present to you a possibility that in the hour since they finalized the terms, they finalized the agreement, okay? But again, okay, notice how also that's what they're going to paint as the example of why this is actually really bad by Trump, because there's nothing about the trade deal they can criticize. Trump dominated. And so these bitter seethers just trying to clean this something are saying, well, he said before that the trade deal wasn't done, and then later he said it was done. What a hypocrite. Okay. Thank you for that. Who is this? Ned Luke, I believe they said he is. Okay. Yeah, just typical. But all right, with all of that in mind, I lastly want to point out here that in reaction to this, stock market futures have risen after Trump has announced his EU trade deal. According to CNBC, you can fully expect, by the way, that when trading begins, at least for the first half of tomorrow, you should see a pretty good day on the stock market. That's not financial advice, by the way, just letting you know that's probably a prediction that is very likely here. So with all of that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. What do you think of the EU trade deal? What do you think of the media's excuses? Really? He said he was negotiating. How dare he do that? Okay, let me know. Be sure to leave a like on this video, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.